Okay. Hey everybody. So we going live. Happy full moon. Happy full moon in Gemini. Y'all are seeing me doing portions of my routine, so I'm just adding uh, a food grade essential oil to my. If you want to come out, there we go. To my water. Y'all see me doing a little bit of my routine here. I try to put the. But yeah, y'all see me doing a little bit of my routine here. So I'm just in the process of still low key getting ready, but I decided to press the live button because I was like, And we are doing this a little different because I'm overstimulated today. It's a Gemini moon, and even though I'm a Gemini sun, me and Gemini moons, we get together like we go along well with each other sometimes. Um, so wanted to say that happy cold moon. We're going to be talking about the cold moon more. This, and that's why I have the Patreon linked in the comments, y'all. Part 2 is going to be in tier 1 of the Patreon. Link with us. So the herbs, the rituals, the workings, the routines, the crystals, none of that's about to be here anymore. It's just about to be straight up astro-cosmological. So if you want that, we have a tier 1. It is $12. And this video and that video will be posted immediately after both lives, okay? So wanted to emphasize that. Y'all saw me spray some of my propolis raw honey throat spray. I'm about to do it again, honestly. Because Gemini rules over kind of the throat with the throat chakra, but it rules over the lungs, right? That cold moon, we're getting closer to the winter solstice. I teach a lot of classes now. Throat chakra, it just be worn out. But y'all, this is usually what I be doing in my little routine before I get up on here. Also, I do crystals, and tonight I'm gonna take tinctures. I'm not gonna take my ones for focus and ADHD because we got the vibe. So I'm about to take lemon balm. Ooh, lemon balm is not the worst one, but it can be pretty bad. Sometimes they make you want to fight. Oh yeah, and did I say we just got a little overhead light on today? Overstimulated, no lights. And I have some Hertz playing in the background, but honestly, this Hertz has been playing for hours. I can't tell you which one it is. Woo! Okay. Now, the last portion of all this is finding my phone that I just put on Do Not Disturb because that's where all the notes are. So let me pull up the notes. I'm glad I did this. Y'all can see my minor routine because I don't post too many routines online. You're never going to be able to clock me, boo. that's that's my Scorpio talking for real. Ain't never going to be able to clock me. Okay, got the final video here. We're about to hop right into it. Okay, so how we're going to do this first portion of the full moon. Hey, my name is Jasmine. This is Flourish Homestead and Apothecary. We are African and Indigenous self-healing collective, period. So we believe that self-healing is our birthright. Over here, we are absolutely rooted in our ancestors. We're absolutely remembering forward. Hold on. And we're absolutely rooted in ritual. We might not be rooted in too many rituals for this moon because this moon won't the trouble. It won't everything. But anyways, let's hop into the astrology, the cosmology for this full moon in Gemini. So we are popping off from more of like a cultural, ancestral, and an astronomical perspective. Usually we just either hop right into the astrology or I'll hop right into like the actual science or the actual math that's involved in astrology. Ooh, I did have a gamma, but I'm already live. So I guess we're not going to do it. Right? And so we're going to jump right into today actually talking about that this moon is actually a super moon. So this moon is one of 4 back-to-back super moons. This is the last one of 2025, right? And this is really important because this moon is the cold moon, this moon is a super moon, and it's a full moon. And yes, all of those things mean different things, and that's actually what we're going to get ready to talk about. So what is a full, or what is a super moon? So a supermoon occurs when the moon reaches what's called a perigee, right? And this is the closest point that the moon comes in its ecliptical orbit, or that is basically like its little rotation, right? Okay, so during this full moon, the moon will be approximately 221,806 miles away from Earth, and the perigee will happen at approximately 6:07 a.m. So it happened this morning. Some of us was up, some of us wasn't. At 6:07 a.m. Eastern time. This is different from the full moon itself. The full moon is a direct opposition between the sun and the moon, which we'll talk about more, and that occurred at 6:14 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Okay, this supermoon, or when you go outside, the moon that you are looking at currently is 8% closer and is 16 degrees brighter than the average full moon. Okay, and since this moon it took place in December, this is what we would call the cold moon. So the cold moon, or the December full moon, is traditionally called the cold moon. Um, Sorry, y'all, my notes. I'm gonna read. I'm gonna tell you about it. Anyways, and it's traditionally called the cold moon, marking the deepening of the cold season, right? And also acknowledging that there's about to be a winter solstice. So basically, the reason why the Mohawk people call this moon the cold moon, and this is where we get the name from. This is one of the indigenous names of this moon, is because it was the last moon. Before the winter solstice. So how they looked at it from a cosmological and astronomical perspective was it was a little bit still above the horizon, and it was going to be there for some time, since we don't actually hit the winter solstice until Capricorn season. Okay. And this moon will create a striking astronomical, not astrological alignment, which will form a triangle between the Pleiades star cluster, the Aberderm. I can never say this particular star. It's the red one that makes up the bull's eye in Taurus. What is the name? The Aberbaron. The Aberbaron. Just some words evade me, no matter how much. And then Jupiter. Jupiter sits close to the moon from the Earth's visual perspective, this full moon, right? And so even though the Jupiter is in Cancer in the second house, and that is the house of assets, resources, values, in the night sky, it will actually appear to be right beside this full moon. Okay. And so this, from a cosmology energetic perspective, really adds the essence of guidance, expansion, and clarity to the winter skies. Okay. And then above what is going on and everything I just told you about is Orion. So we're actually talking about more so from an astronomical perspective. This is what happens if you were to go outside and be under this full moon. This is pretty much what you will be looking at in some form of capacity if you're like in North America, if I'm being honest, okay? And it might have other specific stars and constellations that might show up closer depending on what actual geographical location that you're in. But just wanted to say that, okay? And then above them is Orion. Orion is known as the winter constellation, and this is signaling the true entrance to wintertime cosmology. Okay, now we're about to understand the December full moon from an indigenous cultural perspective. The name cold moon, as I just talked about, is commonly known, or the name that most people in North America who might follow the moon cycle in some capacity, so let's say from an almanac perspective, uses the cold moon, but it originally came from the Mohawk people of Turtle Island. And it reflects both the literal cold of early winter and the moon's relationship to the approaching solstice. This is, and the winter solstice is the longest night of the year, and it is December 21st. So getting ready to come up. However, hold on, I want to make myself more comfortable. Wait a minute. I didn't get my pillows exactly how I want them, and I'm trying to figure out how to do this without having any embarrassing slips. Ooh, any embarrassing slips. um, on camera. because right now, see, this is what I'm talking about, embarrassing slips. Um, See, right now, the way I'm sitting on my meditation pillows is not very comfortable for me. And then let me make sure I don't accidentally kick over the iPad. And the iPad is charging, so I had to put the rest of the cords as part of my charger there too. All right. Okay. So there were many names for what we would call traditionally the cold moon. So the Mohican people called it the long night moon, signaling that this was the last full moon before we had the winter solstice. The Cree called this moon two different names: the drift clearing moon and also the frost expanding moon. In some indigenous tribes, this was called the moon of popping trees. So the Ogalala Lakota, and I said one too many lies in there, but it's Oga La Lahota. And this tribe called this moon the moon of the popping trees, referencing to how the water in the trees, because the transition between fall and winter actually can cause some of the trees to crack. So if you've been walking in the forest and you hear that sound, if you ever go walking in wintertime, that's typically what it is. The Cherokee called this moon the snow moon, and then the Dakota called this moon the moon with deer shed their antlers, real literal up in this thing. In the Obaji, or the Obaji, I always get the not pronunciation, but like enunciation wrong, if that makes any sense. Anyways, and this is called the Little Spirit Moon. These names all represent something unanimous in indigenous cultural relationships with full moons and with this particular cold moon. And this name reflects, or these names reflects, environmental cycles. So being aware of what was going on in the environment. For example, moon of popping trees, frost expanding moon, and also the moon when the deer shed their antlers. Like, it really talks a lot about that. It also talks a lot about animal behavior, spiritual rhythms. So a little spirit moon, long night moon, also cosmological teachings you can see from a cosmological perspective, which is different than astrological or astronomical. What were the value systems, or what was the outlook on life for people who were on Turtle Island and who are still on Turtle Island to this day, right? And also, it talks about the ceremonial timing of it all and the different winter stories and how the community would interact with each other during this time period. So, yeah, what is the spiritual significance of a cold moon? So the cold moon typically brings a yearly closing of a spiritual cycle, right? So getting ready to round out the year, more internal timing, spending more time after particular holidays away from people in the community, because we know that summer and fall are more like communal times, right? The thinning of mental, ancestral, and intuitive veils, yes, and especially this cold moon. We'll talk about it more. The sharpening of discernment during the longest night of the year. So the intuition work that typically picks up during winter time, during the time of the winter solstice. And then the call inward toward wisdom, reflection, and revelation. So again, doing the internal work, doing the shadow work, and also spending a lot of time with self, and also gathering a lot of wisdom during this time period. And also, this is the return of different star types of knowledge when we talk about like different star systems and constellations that are present, such as Orion, but also talking about the impact of where Jupiter is. So those are more so cosmological understandings that we get from the cold moon, and that I've already kind of highlighted in here. In many traditions, the December moon also represents the season of story, the season of gathering around a warm fire. So a lot of griot work, a lot of storytelling is done, a lot of shamanic work, sacred Hekoya or Hoyoka work is done. The season of truth, the season of dreaming, spend a lot of that time sleep. The ancestors didn't waste their time too much doing nothing in cold weather that wasn't vitally important. So that meant they spent a lot of time resting, dreaming, building up that intuition work. And also the season of spiritual alignment. Anytime you're supposed to go internal, it's a time of spiritual alignment. Okay. And so now we're going to talk about how Black and Indigenous people have historically navigated winter. how we approach winter was never a time of fear. It was a time of knowing. It was a time of resting so that you could get deeper into the knowing. So Black and Indigenous people across the world have always used winter as a spiritual season, as a season of truth, as a season of memory, a season of storytelling, like I just told, a season of protection, and a season for discernment, because it's where you cut off everything that's not vital, including people in relationships. It was framed as dark. It was never framed that darkness was danger. It was that it was the keeper of wisdom, right? As a time of introspection and also preparation. And so, like, when we were closest to the longest night of the year, we weren't like using this in ways that still weren't deeply communal. So typically long nights were times where elders told origin stories, right? Where cosmology was taught, where genealogies were recited, where memory keepers passed down history. And when winter sky stars such as the Pleiades and Orion, which were more so seen in this hemisphere during this time of the year, guided spiritual lessons, right? Wintertime was a time of communal protection. Communities drew closer together as a form of strategy because you have to be very strategic to make it through winter, safety, and collective decision making. Fire circles weren't just for heat, they were also for truth telling, learning, but also for accountability and for planning what would happen when we got into spring, when we got into summer, and when we got into fall. In Black Southern families, this tradition continued through porch gatherings. If it was the deep South and it really never got cold, people do that in ways now like trail rides, card tables, domino tables, family gatherings. You know how this time of the year is: Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's. You gonna get together. Y'all gonna be in somebody's dining room, kitchen, or basement or living room. Prayer circles, cooking rituals, coming over, just spending time. I remember a lot of things I would do in the wintertime was like just go over to people's house and we would kind of sit like in the bar area of their kitchen during this time of the year and cook and eat and talk and be in community. So yeah, it's really a time to commune. But wintertime from a Black and Indigenous perspective is a time for divination, baby. It's a time for talking with the ancestors. It's time for talking with spirit. And so in African and Indigenous diaspora cultures, the long nights often were an opener to the veil, right? So this is when diviners worked the most. Dreams were trusted because of people. A lot of people were into their intuition during this time. Vision was sharper because of that intuition development and that rest, spending more time in the astral. Ancestors communicated very clearly. Anything after Scorpio season, up until Aries, right? Because we talk about Pisces, very ancestral. Like the communication between the ancestors is gonna be strong during that time period, right? And intuition was honored. So the cold moon helped us to navigate that. And it was a time where we would often see an increase in divination, right? Again, winter was energetic conservation. It was all forms of conservation, including spiritual. It was spiritually rich, but it was energetically conservative. So our people didn't waste their energy on anything that wasn't important. They protected ways in which they didn't always spend time, even if they were in community speaking. Again, that resting component, that people being lost in their own world, in the astral, in their own universe, stillness, using discernment. That word keeps on coming up. Staying close, but not really saying anything, but because they wanted to be warm. So every moment spent together, we didn't need that Gemini S type of communication that people think we currently need every time you're in deep community. Sometimes the somatic, sometimes the resonance field, sometimes the relational field, all of that plays a role in what makes community. And also because we didn't waste time and everything was important, we were planning our future. We are future planning as people. So this was a time of strategic decision making about certain things, right? What to do, how to move forward, where to go next, where to go when it becomes warmer. So things like that. And winter was also, because of that conservation, a very boundary filled year. So the long nights revealed who you were the closest to, who you walked with most, who you talked with most, who protected you, who drained you, who lied, who actually did the work, who watched, and who sabotaged in silence. This was a time where often alliances were checked, conflicts were resolved or cut because there was no extra added energy to unnecessarily fight them. and people who endanger the group in any sort of way were confronted. We already talked about rest and relaxation and different other aspects of that, but I wanted to bring that up because for a lot of people, that cosmological and astronomical perspective is actually more so how they work with the moon. Okay, so now we're going to move into the astrological perspective. Before that, we always talk about what's the moon and what's the moon cycle because it's an actual science around here and we want to know what we know. So, anyways, what is the moon? The first thing you need to know when working any portion of the moon cycle is that you are always working with the sun and the moon. Therefore, you cannot have the moon, full moon, or any sort of moon work without working with the power of both the sun and the moon. Um, and the sun is the illuminator and the moon is the anchor. And with it being like the closest celestial body that we have to Earth, right? Um, and with that anchoring, it is also how we release the energy, especially when we work with full moon, since it's known for releasing. From an astronomical or astrological perspective, oh my God, from an astronomical perspective, the moon is the Earth's natural satellite and its only satellite, right? And it is called in the gravitational field of Earth. The moon is between 239,000 to 226,000 miles away, but keep in mind tonight is a super moon, so it's really, really close. So it is 221,806 miles away from Earth tonight, which is why it is about what I think 16%. I'm in a different part of the notes now, but 16% brighter and 8% closer. And since it is the closest celestial body that we have, it also governs from an astrological perspective many different things. But from an astronomical perspective, it really works with the gravitational field of Earth by making sure that the wobble, Earth has a natural wobble, and without the moon being there, we would just wobble on our gravitational axis a lot more. And since it helps to stabilize the wobble of Earth, it helps with the stabilization of our climate in our weather. And also, like the moon controls the tides of water because of its large body, it's just controlling the tides of water, including the water that's in us. And we are between 70 to 80% water. Astrologically, the moon is a feminine yin and receptive energy. It's governed by Cancer. It's the ruler of the fourth house. And in astrology, it's known for controlling and regulating your emotions from a Western or personality astrology perspective. The moon spends about 2 days, 2.5 actually, in each sign. And that's why it is really reflected with the water and the emotions because of the fluidness of water and the temporariness and the fluidity that also exists in emotions, right? And in our natal or progressed chart, this placement shows us our innermost world, who we are, when we are most comfortable or when we feel the safest. In astrology, the moon also represents mothers, motherhood, native environments, families, elders, and uh, 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 the IC, so the lowest part of your chart. Okay, so what is a full moon? Astronomically, the full moon is when the sun or when the moon is opposite the sun and the sun's light illuminates the side of the earth or the side of the moon that is facing earth fully. But more scientifically, it is when the earth is located between the moon and the sun is opposite the moon so that it can shine all of its light onto it. Astrologically, this is when there's just an opposition. So 180 degrees apart. The sun and the moon are 180 degrees apart, okay? And the sun is in Sagittarius at 13 degrees and 4 minutes. And the moon is in its sister sign of Gemini at 13 degrees and 4 minutes. See why I be saying, and this is a sign? A science? Anyways, and it is representing the Sagittarius Gemini axis. We're going to be talking about so many other different types of symbology, but I guess we could talk about a little bit about the full moon symbology. So, in ancient African and also indigenous religions or nations, full moon was associated with fertility, birth, abundance, completion, illumination, transformation, and rest. It's a typically very emotional time and is regarded as the most potent portion of the moon calendar. It was a time to represent harvest or reflection and revelation, and a peak time to see results of your intentions that set during the full moon cycle, or during the new moon cycle or at the beginning of the lunar cycle, which is the new moon cycle. Okay. And so typically, how people have historically worked with full moons is being present, being fully aware, allowing whatever comes to you, right? And then, since you are open and receptive, it is not like a time to fight and use a lot of willpower. That's where the association with rest comes from. It's a time to be fully present, accept reality for what it is, and also accept the realities of your goals, your intentions, your work, your shadow work, and what it shows you. It's a time to express or release your feelings or emotions without guilt or having to be ashamed of your emotions. And at an energetic level, this is the spirit of our solar system is fully reflected on the moon because of all the energy that is put on the moon from the sun with the opposition. It's time to be receptive to other parts of yourself and others. And it's a time where we usually work with the dark, the chaos, the spiral, the unconscious, the unilluminated portions of who we are. It's best for celebrating achievement, embracing gratitude, engaging in self-reflection, a time to honor yourself and others, and also resting, releasing. You can do root work, altar work, ancestral altar work, and candle work, but I don't recommend it for this one. And listen, I'm gonna get deeper into that. Okay. So, before we hop into that, let's talk about Gemini energy. As the Gemini sun that I am, we're going to talk about Gemini energy. And I'm going to take some of this. Ooh, that's good. Cinnamon. Okay. So, Gemini in the stars. So, we're going to talk about the constellation, the energetic, and the ancestral cosmology of Gemini energy. So, before we understand the Gemini is a zodiac sign, which is like honoring the archetypes and other portions of energy, right? We have to acknowledge that Gemini is a constellation, which is a real pattern of a light living energy that's nearly 100 light years away from us. Gemini sits high in the northern sky between Taurus and Cancer, surrounded by Orion, which is why you see it tonight during the Gemini full moon, right? With Orion to the south, Lynx, and oh my God, some of these names be turning me up. Like, oh, Orija, I can never pronounce it, to the north, and Canis Minor to the southeast. It's one of the most familiar winter constellations, visible between the latitudes of plus 90 degrees and negative 60 degrees. And even though it's only the 30th largest constellation, it holds some of the biggest spiritual signatures. So think about how we think about Gemini energy, think about Pollux and Castor. So I wanted to say that. In the sky, Gemini is not just the twins. It is a constellation of double wisdom, a portal of sacred communication. The twins aren't just social twins, they are soul twins, one mortal, one divine, one seen, one unseen, one rooted in the body, one rooted in the spirit. We see this representation in so many places, especially in many African and Kemetic cosmologies that hold the same pattern, such as the Ka and the Ba, the earthly soul and the spiritual soul, which is Kemetic spiritual science, right? Um, and we see them walking together as mirrors, or one end of a portal and another end of a portal. But again, don't be careful with that portal work. This Gemini full moon. I'm really trying to tell y'all that. Okay. In this aspect, the twin nature also shows up as double consciousness, as second thought, and the ability to walk through two realms at once. Further in Kemetic cosmology, Gemini echoes the sacred pairs. So Ma'at and Jehutamas, Heru and Set, they were actually brothers. And these divine twins maintain cosmic balance. It also reflects Su and Tefnut, children of Atum, born of breath and moisture. Very much so when we talk about Gemini energy. And these elements make speech possible. During Gemini season and Gemini moon, communication becomes a sacred act. Listen, the people I have allowed myself to talk to today, it has been chef's kiss. You know, I don't really talk to many people outside of my circle at all. I damn sure don't talk to people on full moons unless you really mean something to me. So that sacred act of communication, it was, because every word becomes a ritual, a spell work, a routine, and every breath becomes an invocation. Within this constellation itself, two stars guide the energy. So Castor, the elder twin, the body, the logic, and the physical realm, and Pollux, the divine twin, the spirit, the intuition, and the unseen. I might have to crack open the second water soon before long. Anyways, across indigenous American star traditions, these two have long been seen as watchers, protectors, guides for hunters, journeyers, and dreamwalker. In Mississippian cosmology specifically, twin figures are often associated through dream time, through migration, and through liminal crossing. Gemini energy is most visible in the winter, where a lot of the cosmology understandings that we talk about comes from. So being the watcher, protector, guide for hunters, journeymen, and dream walkers specifically, because you do a lot of rest during that time. And it's also why in Mississippian cosmology, the twins are often associated with people who are doing the liminal work, dream work, migration. So if you were going to travel right now, you definitely need protection, right? Because of the natural elements and natural things that go on, and also liminal crossing. So, when or with Gemini being most visible in the winter, rising with Orion in the cold months, it shines its brightest when the nights are the longest and when the world is quiet enough to hear the messages clearly. By the time Gemini season arrives in late May, the constellation disappears into like the sun's glare, right? So, really wanted to highlight when it's most visible in that specific relationship that Gemini energy has to right now, winter. Okay. Energetically, Gemini governs messengers, wayfinders, diviners, griots, writers, speakers, healers, threshold walkers, and anybody whose calling involves communication between two worlds. Gemini holds the mystery of duality, not conflict, but as integration, logic and intuition, body and spirit, earth and sky, self and shadow. It is breath that carries truth, the word that shifts timelines, the voice that breaks silence, the story that keeps a lineage alive. When Gemini is activated, whether by the new moon, a full moon, or a season, the spirit opens the doorway of thought, language, and revelation. Messages come quicker, dreams become louder, ancestral guidance awakens. This is the constellation of transmission. The twins are the bridge, and Gemini energy is the breath that carries wisdom from one realm to the other. I'm trying to think if I want to say this next part, yeah. So whenever the moon then moves into Gemini, which we're currently in a Gemini full moon, everything becomes a little quicker. The mind, the breath, the conversation, the curiosity, and the lunar energy is not just like water, like that of like a moon in Pisces, or rooted like the full moon in Taurus that we just had. Gemini brings a twin wind to the emotional body, which is the intellectualization of emotions. Like then you are able to process your emotions, like that connection between the somatic and the mental or the psychological really kind of bridges better. It flows better. And so a lot of things from the unconscious or the body or the emotions, they just come up during this time period. And so you have thoughts that you can feel, emotions that you can think. And sometimes it feels like you just catching ideas out there. So yeah, wanted to say that about this. Do I really want to say more? Nah. About the moon in Gemini. I guess we could speak more about the moon being in Gemini. So, like I was just saying, the moon in Gemini process emotion through language, through questions, conversations, journaling, pacing, humming, reading, texting, writing. It's a lunar signature that wants to talk it out before it can feel it out. For some people, this can feel contradictory. And the people who are like natal Gemini moons, you can kind of feel sometimes contradictory. Like, I know a Gemini moon. I love him, and I'm a Gemini sun, but he's a walking contradiction. And I say that with love. I say that with a lot of love. I think he knows that about himself too. Put on essential oil. Mm, mm, mm. And also, like I said, been been using the vocal cords a lot. So now we just lost our place in the notes. Mm-mm. Mm. Okay, we are getting back to where we need to be. Okay, so this is a mutable This is a mutable air moon ruled by Mercury. So that's where sometimes natal moon in Geminis, or right now, how you can be feeling is restless, curious, thirsty, very thirsty for stimulation. And it's an emotional moon that lives in the lungs, which is why we're going to be talking about congestion later today. The throat, the hands, and the voice, which is why you see me doing everything that I'm doing today. And you see me like with the lights off, like I am managing overstimulation. Even this one, like I thought I had this one. I was like, oh, it got more yellow in it. But it's still kind of overstimulating me because I don't want to be in light at all. And at best, a Gemini moon is lighthearted, witty, adaptable, expansive. So this is also how you might be feeling right now. It holds curiosity of a child and the versatility of a storyteller. This moon is that of the griot, the moon of community messenger, the moon that bridges laughter into grief and clarity into confusion. It's in its shadow. A moon in Gemini can become a mental maze. Ooh, that's true. Restlessness, distraction, unfinished thoughts, switching emotions too fast, or so fast that you can't even like feel them. Looping, over analyzing, avoiding stillness. That's why I said people can't do altarwork and ritual work right now, because I know some people avoiding. I know what some people avoiding. And listen, what you do right now, it's going to stick and stick with a lesson. So I'm just saying. In Hoodoo, in some ATR traditions, the moon in Gemini carries the signature of Eshu or Elegua. Now, keep in mind, Hoodoo is different than ATRs. But if you are a person who is a hoodooist and you practice ATRs, the frequency of this moon can often be associated with Papa Legba, Eshu, Elegua. The divine messenger, the crossroads speaker, the one who walks and talks across realms. This lunar placement blends intuition with intellect, ancestral dreaming with knowledge, or with language. Knowledge. That Piscean slip right there with a North Node being in Pisces. And turns speech into spell work. Under a Gemini moon, every word, like I just said, when I was talking about the people I've talked today, is a ritual. Every breath is a message. And every idea is an opening. When we're working with the moon in Gemini, whether it's a new moon or a full moon, we are always working with the lunar frequency that invites us to both integrate both of our minds, the emotions, and the intellectual mind. So the emotional mind and the intellectual mind. It teaches us that feelings can ride on airwaves, that thought can be a form of connection. Oh my God, thought can definitely be a form of connection. Especially when you understand that sometimes thoughts ain't your own. I mean, no, a lot of times thoughts ain't your own. But anyways, and the tongue and the throat are not just physical parts of the body. They're portals. Ooh, that harmony one. Ooh, that harmony one. I love harmony oil. I like that relaxation oil too, but that harmony oil just set it off. Anyways, we're now going to do an astrological and cosmological interpretation for this full moon. So this is when we start. We didn't really talk about the actual math of this full moon today because it was supposed to be in presentation form for y'all to be able to look, but I forgot to pull it up. So we're going to be doing astro-cosmological, where we're going to be talking about the different placements and the different things that's going on, and basically the mental somatic energy that it creates, because this is a very mental and somatic moon naturally. So before we do that, I just wanted to really talk about why it's important that we do this from an astro cosmological perspective. And that's because this is how our ancestors read the sky. Our ancestors didn't read the sky like, oh, that's astrology, that's cosmology, that's astronomy. They didn't do none of that shit. They read it as one. And it's the most natural way to read if you really read this information, because it's holistic. So a blend, this doesn't mean that you can't specialize in niches. This just means for me, because I am more so relational, more so ancestrally rooted, that I know that this way works for me because this is the way that my ancestors did it. So it's epigenetic, it's in my blood, baby. And so it blends astrology, cosmology, and astronomy. And it means that we don't just look at the planets, we don't just look at the signs, we don't just look at the constellations, the seasons. We also look at the cultural teachings, and we also look at the ancestral teachings that are passed down, because the time periods that these are told, right? What is going on in the sky when we are telling these stories? What is our natural rhythm and our natural timing during this time period really does matter. And so that's why we about to read the astrology from an cosmological perspective. I guess I can't have attitude and enunciate things right at the same time. Anyways, okay. So if there was going to be a theme title of this moon, it's that the wind remembers what the fire tried to forget. This is a very, from an elemental perspective, very heavy air moon and very heavy fire moon. Okay. And because of that, this ain't a quiet moon. This is a moon where the mind, the nervous system, the hidden self, and the unspoken truth all collide. This full moon in Gemini sits directly in the 12th house. The 12th house is the house of unconsciousness, ancestral residue. We keep on talking about that every time we go live. We talking about some ancestral residue because for me, it's a 12th house year. So that's heavy with me anyways, and I guess it's just going to come through. But also, it's a 9 year. So it's a lot of ancestral residue that's happening anyways. Forgotten memories, spiritual interfaces, old agreements, that one right there, and hidden narratives. And because this moon is in the 12th house, it's also a time where we are really getting things through sleep, dreams, intuition, and we are processing what usually we cannot process. So this full moon in the 12th house is always pulling back the veil, and there is no more veil left. It is snatched. The veil has no edges. So this moon really and all that energy with the bit in the 12th house is also very amplified by the fact or magnified by the fact that there's a stellium in Sagittarius that is directly opposing this full moon. And let me just tell you, and this is why I'm saying don't do altar work, don't do candle work. If you're not gonna go all the way through, don't ask nothing of your ancestors. Well, it's a full moon. You should be venerating them, especially if you look like this. Damn, I'm kind of ashy. But if you look like this, you better wait till that new moon in Scorpio to be talking to your aunt, to be asking anything of your ancestors if you really want that thing to hit. But this is not a time, this full moon is not a time for doing a lot of rituals or routines if you're like not going to see them all the way through, if you're not going to do the proper cleansing rites before, during, and after, right? So this is not a time where you go and talk to your ancestors and ask them like your ancestors, interact with your ancestors, ask your ancestors to reveal something, and you don't fix them they food. They're gonna be pissed. And whatever you ask for, they're about to teach you a long ass lesson. It's about to be a spiritual ass whooping. So, just don't do it, in my opinion. Root working is a little different because root working is like a way of life. You can't not root work. It's like in your everything. I was like, what is going on? Because the babes got the premium. So there should be no stopping. I thought we were about to hit a commercial and I was about to get mad. Like, y'all took that money. But, my meditation music has been playing for pretty close to like 11 hours. So I guess it can take a break. I guess. I'm very demanding around here. And like I said, this moon won't the smoke, it won't the problems, it won't the issues, it won't to teach you the lesson, it won't to give consequences. And this moon is also a crash out moon. So don't be thinking and bopping around too cute, too cocky. Because it's a Gemini moon and you think you're not emotional. You is. So you just can't feel it. That's the difference. Okay, so why am I really saying on this? Let's start with the Sagittarius stellium that's opposing this moon. So the Sun, Venus, and Mars are in Sagittarius, and they are not gentle energies. Like Sagittarius ain't gentle, right? And Sagittarius energy, when it has the Sun, Mars, and Venus, and it really represents truth telling, blunt revelations, ideological pressure, moral clarity, philosophical conflict, that one, the burning away of illusions, the impulse to declare, expose, and name something. And when I tell you, I'm a Gemini, I can drag. I can drag somebody with surgical precision. But who gonna give me a run for my money on dragging somebody or something in a very expose sort of way is a Sagittarius. Yeah, respectfully. Anyways, so with the Sun conjunct Venus and Mars, this fire is very personal. And it's very personal because the Sun, Venus, and Mars are all personal planets. They are not generational planets. I mean, whoever you share that sun sign with for that time period is that. but those are all personal planets. Okay, it's very relational, which we have Venus being there. The relational field is there, and Mars is very relational too, as the mirror component of Venus energy. It's also very embodied, very sensuous. Think of Venus energy ruling over Taurus energy. That sensuousness, that embodiment doesn't really go away, and it's picked up really, really well when Venus and also Mars, right? If I'm being honest, is in Sagittarius. It can be very desirous and also very uncompromising, like how I just was with my meditation music. Like, what you mean you cutting off? We not done working yet, right? So overall, I guess what I'm highlighting is like this is not um, a soft illumination. This is a sword point clarity illumination. Okay. This full moon often could feel like crisis and then clarity immediately after the crisis. My gosh, baby, we did it again. We lost our notes again. So where we at? Here we go. Crisis and clarity. Boom. Thank you. And still went back up. Nasty work right there, huh? And this is a sore point clarity moon that hits the emotional body like the moon with just a lot of force because of the opposition that's there. And so this full moon opposition is really a crisis that has a lot of clarity to it. Like if you're going through the crisis, and the crisis could be anything. It's like the tower moment in the tarot card, right? It's really asking you, what am I actually feeling? The Sagittarius stellium replies, here's the truth, whether you like it or not, right? So the moon is asking you, what am I feeling? And the Sagittarius opposition to the moon in the light that is just shining on the moon while it's in Gemini is asked, they're telling you, like, I'm going to tell you the truth. And I don't really care how you feel about it. In this axis, so the Sagittarius Gemini axis that's really being highlighted is about contradiction, double-mindedness, multiple truths, which Gemini and both Sagittarius energy are good for competing narratives, the story versus the facts. So the story is Sagittarius, the facts is Gemini, right? The mask versus the mirror, the spiritual teacher and the inner child, but also overall the crossroads, baby. The crossroads. Ooh, hit my lip. The crossroads. So, anyways, and I kind of banged on y'all right there. Anyways, the Gemini moon is in the 12th house. Really, this is an unconscious full moon. This is where the unconscious speaks with that Gemini energy there, but also with that Sagittarius energy being there, and also with the fact that Uranus is in the 12th house along with the moon. So this full moon in Gemini, or when the moon is in Gemini, it naturally activates the nervous system, communication overload, overthinking, spiraling thoughts, getting caught in those loops, and mental restlessness. Placed in the 12th house, these themes go underground. They go to the unconscious. They go to the somatics, right? And it highlights where your hidden thoughts rise. So thoughts that you typically might spend energy suppressing might make their way up. Suppressed memories definitely activate. Unspoken truths surface. Subconscious messaging leaks through in your waking reality. Dreams become prophetic or confrontational. Maybe sometimes both. Okay, the dreams become that prophetic and confrontational. Secrets dissolve. Secrets is coming out right now, and it don't immediately have to be before or during this full moon, but just know, like between now and next week. And I'm not saying at a collective level. I'm saying like in your life, when people sometimes give astrological readings, they be like trying to talk about from a collective perspective. And the fact is, we don't even value secrets right now because they're told every day in the type of society we live in, and repeated patterns become undeniable. This is a moon. This is a mind unveiling moon. So that's why I said it's very mental and somatic moon, not just emotional, not physical, but where you have a lot of mental and spiritual revelations. Okay. And impacting this even more, again, like I just said, is that Uranus is retrograde in Taurus in the 12th house. And because the 12th house, or because Gemini and Taurus are right beside each other, sometimes the way things break down in a different math, you can have two celestial bodies in two different zodiac signs in the same house. Okay. And this is really giving this energy. This is why this moon wants to smoke. This is why this moon wants to smoke. This is why it's a crash out moon. And it's a disruptive spirit behind the moon. So Uranus is in retrograde in Taurus. in the 12th house, and it really has an underpinning of instability around what you cannot see. Ancestral shocks, nervous system jolts, sudden clarity, sudden endings, unexpected breakthroughs, spiritual or psychic disruptions, intuition snapping open. And in particular, I'm going to use a particular phrase, okay? And this is blind spot explosions, okay? And I'll explain that later. Because Uranus is in retrograde, it pulls the disruption inward, the internal revelation. This is the spirit saying you can no longer pretend not to know. And because the full moon is also in the 12th house, Uranus becomes the shadow trigger for this full moon. I'm sorry. I don't want to seem, like cuckoo or anything, but I like shadow work and not be like in very catalyzing moments. But me and Uranus and Taurus haven't always got along. And we only getting along because it's about to be done. Uranus went into Gemini a couple months early this year. I got my own thing back. Because Uranus been in Taurus for years, was kicking my ass as a Mercury and Venus in Taurus. Okay, but Uranus being the shadow trigger for this full moon creates emotional overwhelm, mental overstimulation, big spiritual downloads, being caught in panic, clarity, relief loops. So that looping, the Gemini energy I told you about, sudden shifts in your identity because you ain't lying to yourself no more. And also collapsing of old coping mechanisms, very 12th house, very ancestral disruptions, very ancestral unveilings, okay? And because Uranus is in Taurus, the sign that rules over the 12th house in this chart, body memory is very activated. Ancestral trauma points flare, somatic triggers connect to mental insight and self-worth narratives already stabilized and rewritten. This is like an ancestral nervous system clearing moon. So think about the Pisces eclipse that happened. It kind of is in alignment with that energy, what we talked about. Okay, so also there's another element, like if you are talking about your own internal psychology, morals, belief system, Uranus and Taurus can rewrite your values, your ethics, and your agreements, right? And so this full moon specifically, you can experience shifts in your morals, shifts in your ethics, and shifts in your values, and also shifts in your self-worth because of that Uranus and Taurus energy. And with the retrograde, this moon doesn't just change your mind, it changes the foundation. So the underpinning, the information, the input of like why your mind came to that conclusion in the first place. But Mercury is the planetary ruler for this moon and it is in Scorpio. So speak your mind. Mercury in Scorpio is the truth with teeth, which I'll explain in a minute, emotional honesty, revealing what's been hidden, and ending self-betrayal, cutting cords to silence and silent agreement. So this adds a very sentient and invocation and mindset kind of energy to this full moon. And so the thought process that I would have here is speak your mind and allow your truth to change, maybe even multiple times with that Sagittarius stellium being there. And this is really, to me, the heart of the moon because it is the planetary ruler of the moon. So the planetary ruler of this Gemini full moon is Mercury because Mercury rules over Gemini and it is currently in Scorpio in the 5th house. And so in this way, when I'm saying it's the heart of the moon, you can look at the Scorpio energy as it retrieves the information. It retrieves what's the truth. The Sagittarius energy evolves it or flips it or changes it and then it scrutinizes it. And then the Gemini information or the Gemini energy in its information and attachment to facts kind of just was like, it expresses it. Okay. Also with this Mercury, and this Mercury is opposing Taurus energy, which Uranus is in. So this means the truth got teeth. So tell the truth, but remember that it got a certain edge to it. So this is one of the most important aspects of this full moon also, because with the moon being in Scorpio, in the 5th house, and opposing Uranus in the 12th house, this creates revelation with consequences, right? That's a big one. That's a big one. Words that cut open what is hidden. Secrets rupturing and psychic truth surfacing uncontrollably. This opposition governs confessions, disclosures, uncomfortable truths, confrontations with hidden motivations. That's the one right there. And breaking psychological patterns. Now, somebody I know broke a lot of psychological patterns recently, and I'm proud of them. But anyways, I'm releasing mental shame, exposing betrayal, and understanding what was previously obscured. All right, all right. So because of the fire and the air energy, and this is how fire and air rock, especially when they're together, and because sister signs of Gemini and Sagittarius energy and that big opposition is happening, overstimulation. Overstimulation to the highest degree. So the nervous system undertones is really, really here. And so incense humming, rocking, moon gazing, or if you're a real one, putting on some clothes and sitting outside and literally sitting under the moon like I'm getting ready to do. And it snowed a little bit too, so I'm gonna be a little cold. And also like you see right here, I have my pink light on, pink light therapy, purple light therapy instead of blue light. So blue light means staying off that phone, staying off social media. And this is precisely what a Gemini Sagittarius axis is, right? Essentially, it's sensory modulation, and then with that sensory modulation, you adjusting to your needs, adjusting to your sensory needs, okay? And then another underpinning here is that there's a silent Scorpio stellium that adds fixed water to this fire and this air energy. So you have Mercury in Scorpio, which we just talked about. Lilith is in Scorpio, and the vertex is in Scorpio. So this is really like an ice moon that's poured on top of the overstimulation of the fire and the air energy. And ice is focus, precision, boundary, clarity, shadow truths, and body intelligence. It can also be sexual energy, very much so too, as an underpinning to this. Um, but really, Scorpio with this Scorpio stellium brings an underpinning of emotional truth to this moon that can also add to the overstimulation if you aren't ready to like accept it. And also, there's just always, whenever you have a major lunation in a fire sign, it always is going to be trining other fire signs. And currently, it's kind of enhancing this moon, just this little scotch. And that is the fact that Chiron is retrograde in Aries, right? So we have a fire trine that is taking place with that. And I'm trying to think, I can't really think if his name is in Leo, not off the top of my head, I can't remember. But typically when there is a fire trine, even if there are no celestial bodies in Leo, there's still a house in Leo. Kind of brings the energy of healing identity, healing courage, self-trust, healing of the self-trust, and healing of clarity of your purpose. Especially with that retrograde Chiron in Aries right now, a lot of self-work, it has been happening and will continue to happen until 2026. And so that self-work for you could be revealed or highlighted, like in maybe ways you are doing, so a progress report, or maybe there's just a way that you need to pivot. And so this supports the like don't do what you don't want kind of energy right now. Like, I mean, in Gemini, a fire trine, you're not gonna do anything. So just wanted to talk about that. um Uh, and that trine energy doesn't come from the moon. It comes from Sagittarius. My bad. So wanted to say that too. And so what this full moon actually does from a cosmological and astrological soul tech perspective is exposes hidden thoughts within yourself and others, breaks certain mental patterns, reveals what you are afraid to say, dissolves false narratives because you can't mask no more, reveals spiritual and ancestral interference, collapses illusions around relationships, Venus energy, reveals real desire or resentment, Mars energy, and also forces honesty that liberates the nervous system, connects the mind and the ancestral body, that Taurus 12th house Uranus energy that's there. Okay. Now, what does this mean? This means that the Gemini full moon energy should be for embodied, somatic, like voice work. So prayer. We're going to talk about prayer in the tier 1 Patreon after we get done here. Voice invocations, breath work, and paying attention overall to your breath. Embodiment through voice, sound, or movement. Because, like I said, it's very mental and somatic moon. So I'm going to spend a lot of time rocking. I have spent a lot of time rocking today. I spend a lot of time rocking every day, but it really helped today. And letting the body speak to the mind. Okay. So just wanted to say that. So from a like intellectual place, or even from like an astral travel place, like this moon is a really good time to read, to go down rabbit holes, to research, watch YouTube documentaries, watch documentaries overall. This weekend, tomorrow's Friday, go to a museum. Look at some art, go to an art show if there's one in your area, having immersive experiences. So with that Sagittarius energy there, and that trining other fire sign energy, so including picking up on that Chiron energy, go to like, what is that place where you can just hit stuff? That will be fun right about now. Also, astral projection may be easy, and timeline jumping may be easy, and that's because this moon is really highlighting, and what's going on is really highlighting that mind wanderer and soul wanderer energy. That's really a combination of, the Gemini moon and the Sag sun. So really wanted to talk about that. Since you shouldn't be doing a lot of work right now on your altars, candle work, altar work, ancestral work, if you ain't gonna clean all the way and you're not gonna follow the rites and the rituals and the processes all the way through, salt work. Salt work is the best thing that you can do. So the 12th house energy really brings the ability to do salt work, which is very earth based in nature. And so I would say salt your doorways, window sills, bed protection. And if you have a altar to your high self, to your ori, to your highest mind, to your first witness, clean that thing overnight and put some salt on it. Salt the whole thing and then sweep it off in the morning. And then have a place where you offer the salt outside. Anyways, and this is a perfect response to that Taurus, Uranus retrograde 12th house energy. And salt is known to be grounding earth energy. It's very good for boundary work, purification work, containment, nervous system stabilization, and ancestral protection. We're going to get deeper into that in the Patreon. Okay. So, from a spiritual and metaphysical perspective, the themes for this Gemini full moon, it's a full breakdown from an energetic and a metaphysical perspective. Is, again, I said one particular thing when we were talking from a more of an astro-cosmological perspective that highlighted the mental somatic aspects. But when we talk about themes, overall themes, that blind spot explosion, a blind spot explosion as the primary theme for this Gemini full moon pretty much means when something you were completely unaware of, something hidden, something suppressed, off your radar, or intentionally concealed, suddenly becomes undesirably visible in a way that you cannot ignore, reframe, or soften. It is abrupt, disruptive, revolutionary, or revelationary, true-filled, shocking but clarifying, and emotionally or psychologically catalytic. It is the moment where unconscious becomes conscious so fast that it looks like a detonation. It looks like something went on. And it's the astrological mechanism that supports, or the astrological perspective that supports this energy, is the Mercury as Scorpio, which is the ruler of this moon. Again, Uranus and Taurus, and that the full moon is also taking place in the 12th house that's governed by Taurus. When you combine these, you get something like the things that you don't want to acknowledge in that Sagittarius energy, you don't make it no better, didn't know existed or couldn't see, reveals itself suddenly and with impact. Again, that's why I keep on saying that this moon is not gentle, it's not slow, it wants to smoke, all of that. Okay. So, what are the characteristics of a blind spot explosion if you feel like it could come out of nowhere? Because it can. Sudden cognitive clarity. That's a big one. So, your thoughts drop into your mind fully formed. And you suddenly pick up on patterns. Oh my God, that's what's been happening. I see that now. That person was never aligned. Or this habit is destroying me. This is not gradual awakening. This is an instant understanding. Emotional, nervous system, or body jolts. So you might feel it before you analyze it. So spike in the spine. Yes. Your stomach dropping, sudden rushings of heat, throat tightening, shaking hands. Oh, look, my hands are not shaking today. Yeah, I'm happy about that. And the ringing in the ears. I ain't even gonna talk about ringing in the ears today. So that is basically Uranus being a trigger point and activating the nervous system. Also, hidden motives are revealed. That Mercury Scorpio know that truth gonna come out, and it's gonna hit and land in any way with all the Sagittarius energy. So Mercury and Scorpio uncover secret resentment, jealousy, manipulation, gaslighting, betrayal, unprocessed emotions, or unspoken agendas. It literally is acting as a flash of X-ray vision during this full moon. Ancestral truth overrides because this moon is a 12th house moon. The blind spot explosions are often taking place about ancestral warnings. So if you are going to take the time and speak and engage with your ancestors and then venerate them and give them an offering, you could get warnings, intuitive red flags, subconscious truth telling, a dream that feels like a message, and some realization about lineage patterns. This literally just happened to a friend. Full moon in Gemini. Anyways, and the ancestors are basically saying, enough. See this, because this is something that got to be healed, filled, beat out, something. Okay. And collapse of denial. It's going to be really hard to deny something because the pattern, the knowing, is just going to be so high. So the blind spot explosion will literally end and attack illusions, excuses, narratives that you or others have been holding on to, false beliefs, your coping stories, what you have been avoiding, spiritually bypassing. Because a lot of people are spiritual, but a lot of people do be bypassing stuff. I get it. Unresolved loyalty to people who harm you, right? It just, you can't pretend no more. You can't mask, right? And the truth may come out sideways. So with this moon, blind spot explosions may come up through slips of the tongue, like when I said knowledge when I was supposed to say something else earlier, overheard conversations, accidental disclosures, sudden confessions, unexpected messages, sensory cues, smell, sound, tones, or toned, and someone showing you their resentment unprovoked. So really wanted to say that. Another one of the themes, so the second major theme is revelation through contradiction. So this Gemini Sagittarius axis creates space for double truths that could thus expose deeper truths. So Spirit uses this moon to show you where your words and your actions have not been lining up, and where your desires and your decisions aren't aligned, where your spirit and your persona split, where the story you tell doesn't match the path that you're walking, and the contradiction will reveal itself, the truth will reveal itself, intention um, might also reveal itself about the direction or the next chapter that you need to go in. Ancestral intelligence is awakening. So, with that 12th house energy being there, with the Mercury Scorpio energy being the planetary ruler of the moon, ancestral communication through the nervous system is big, big, big. And sometimes this might not have to come with directly sitting at an altar, revering your ancestors, or making an offering to them. This moon opens up dream portals, clear cognizance, clear scent, intuitive flashes, psychic memory, and inherited spiritual gifts. Inherited spiritual gifts can really, really turn on during this moon. Oh, and your ancestors could communicate through shifts in energy, scent. That was one. That was a big one. Pressure, sudden clarity. We definitely talked about that sudden clarity. Body temperature changes or clear audience. And that, and like, listen, if you or your third eye could be activated by impressions. Clear audience can be really loud right now. Just wanted to say. Also, contracts that don't work for you and contracts that are false is the fourth major theme of this full moon. So this Sagittarius stellium and is currently in the sixth house, which is the house of routines, the house of systems, the house of, I guess to a certain extent, rituals too. So daily life spiritual contracts are dissolving. These contracts often are around obligation, performance, identity roles, relational patterns, big one there, generational expectations, community ties, emotional labor, and survival strategy. This moon energetically dissolves all of that or reveals it so that you are able to dissolve it. Maybe for your ancestors and other energy do it for you. Yeah. So spiritual discernment and unmasking. I've been saying the whole time. This is out of moon that you can mask in. The Mercury, Scorpio opposing retrograde Uranus, right? Deception cannot hold its shape. Masking is a form of deception. As a neurodivergent ADHD person, I'm not attacking masking. I'm highlighting this, that it's a survival mechanism, right? And so energetically, this reveals hidden enemies, false friends, spiritual interference, emotional parasites, jealousy, manipulation, psychic entanglement, and outdated alliances when we come to just revealing contracts, right? And contracts around masking. And it's also sharpening up your discernment. So this moon cuts the cord between you and anyone that is anchored in secret competition, control, or resentment. And it's really not going to feel bad emotionally. Even though this is a crash out moon, if you want to let go of something, this the moon and let it go and never look back. And it's going to stick too. Nervous system ascension speed up. The nervous system from a metaphysical or energetic perspective will uh, basically speed up or have like some sort of a upgrade or change, right? And the symptoms could include buzzing, restlessness, overstimulation, insomnia, sudden fatigue. I got a big download last night, and then I was just like, and I stayed asleep for 12 hours, right? Strange dreams, sharper intuition, louder thoughts, especially around that pattern, that looping, and energetically, what your body is rewiring, okay? Whoo, psychic smell as a warning system. Listen, on a metaphysical level, smell becomes prophecy. Strange scent patterns, you can definitely pick on, and what it could mean is a shift in timeline, a warning, an energetic visitor, a hidden decay in a relationship, an ancestral alert, or a message to pay attention to, right? Destiny drifting and timeline jumping, Sagittarius and Gemini energy. This is what I would say is the eighth theme of this moon, governs movement in a mental, spiritual, physical, and a psychic way. This moon activates astral travel, spontaneous timeline jumping, deja vu, ancestral roads, parallel self communication, talking to yourself between dimensions, right? A soul contract update, sudden relocational desires. Ooh, I don't even want to talk about that one. I do not want to talk about that one. An intellectual rabbit hole transformation. The destiny shifts through information, intuition, and insight. The ninth one is the end of mental binding spells. This is huge. This is a huge theme from a metaphysical perspective. With that Mercury and that Uranus energy being there, experiencing mental binding spells, releasing around thought loops, compulsive narratives, limited beliefs, inherited fears, mental binding for others. So, too, like the mental aspect of co enmeshment and codependency really could change religious indoctrination. Hint, hint. I'm not in the Patreon, so let me act like I got some sense. Self-betrayal stories and psychic interference. This is freedom through disruption. This is a breaking spell moon, very much so. Vocal liberation and word magic as awakening. So Gemini rules over the voice, Sagittarius rules over the truth, Scorpio rules over power. All of them together makes this a real. Words are binding. Words are spells, sort of energy, the power to manifest, cut through, and call in through language. And it's hard because, like, this is a full moon, it's not a new moon. So the things that you are attracting in, the things that are crossing over the threshold are just naturally going to come, right? So energetically this moon strengthens spoken spells out loud, reveals lies in conversation, exposes corrupt speech, amplifies affirmation, enhances invocation, and activates thought-based magic. Uh, 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 uh. Whoa, when I tell you that hit right on my vocal cords, it definitely did. Okay. So the next one is, if you've been struggling with discernment lately, this is what, the 10th or the 11th theme. Expect for your discernment to return, especially if you are looking to work, pray to your first winners or read your highest self. Pray to your discernment also and ask for it to return, and then call all of your energy back to you. Since it's full moon, you can't do that. Okay. And so expect return and understanding around how your discernment has returned, and maybe even how it is like stronger. And it'll happen in a way where you don't have any judgment of yourself. There's also no paranoia, even though that Mercury is in Scorpio. And it won't be in a fearful way. But discernment is the ability to see, sense, and know. So there is a somatic or a sensory or a sensual component to this moon. And it's really about what is aligned, what is energetically true, also what is spiritually harmful, what is expired, what is manipulative, and what is yours and what is not. That is how at first your discernment will return. Okay. Um, there's some spiritual uh, themes around the aspects of the moon, but really, honestly, we're at an hour 15, so roll over to that Patreon tier one, the soft life circle, $12, baby, and you can get that portion. What we are going to do and what I am going to leave this with, because this is our act of service for the larger collective, is this. And that is, we actually have questions that I would like to end with. So let's get to those questions. And of course, I'm looking for my questions. This is my final draft, right? Yeah, this is your final draft, but you didn't include it in there. So I have to go back to my raw notes or my rough notes. No issue. And go to where my questions are. Okay, all right. Here are the questions. Okay, so the reflection questions for this cold moon from a metaphysical, cultural, and ancestral perspective is, first of all, that blind spot explosion and the truth questions. So, what truth revealed itself to you this full moon that you can no longer deny? What contradictions in your life is helping you see the deeper truth? What have you been avoiding clarity because it would change everything in? In which relationships, roles, and responsibility reveal that it actually has an expiration date? From a body or sensory perspective, because it's very much of a sensory and body and somatic moon, what does my body tell me before my mind understood it? Where do I feel tension, or warning, and resistance or release? What sense, sounds, and subtle signals caught my attention this month? And, or this lunar cycle. If you think about it from an air quote Gregorian calendar month perspective, that's like the 4th day of December. And where's my nervous system asking for more protection? From an ancestral and spiritual perspective, what teaching did my ancestors give me through this long night moon, right? So since it's the last moon before the winter solstice, what teachings, what lessons do you know that you're getting from your ancestors? Do you feel that you're getting from your ancestors? What patterns or contracts is dissolving that belongs to an older version of you, but not the current version of you, and dang sure not a future version of you? What spiritual or intuitive gifts have sharpened during this full moon? And how has this moon been preparing you for winter initiations that go along with the winter solstice? From a cosmological and destiny based perspective, what memory returned to you when you were getting a better understanding about the Pleiades, the Aldebaran, or the Orion constellation? So the Pleiades is a star constellation system. The Aldebaran is the eye of the bull in the Taurus constellation, really highlighting that Uranus and Taurus energy. And again, Orion is right above this lunar cosmological event that's currently taking place. Okay. And based upon that, what path, idea, or inspiration is calling you in 2026, since this is the last month of 2025 for the Gregorian calendar? What part of my body feels cleaner or clearer up under this supermoon? Because it's close. And it's close as last month's, but it is pretty close. And how has this moon been preparing your voice, truth, and energy for the coming year? Boom, 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 boom. Okay, so we are getting ready to hop over to that Patreon. The link is right there in the comments, my loves. Bye.